Welcome back to Ecocentric. The last 2 years were hot years, and if you've been watching that long, you might remember back in July of 2020 I said this year is not a good year to judge what can grow here, and I was referring to the tomatoes. But it goes for any of the warm season crops, of course. This year, the first 5 months of this year, for each month, was slightly warmer than the respective month in 2019. June is coming in a little cooler, but we'll wait and see whether... I don't think it'll get as cold as 2018, because in 2018 my last recorded frost was June the 26th. My last recorded actual negative temperature, below freezing temperature, was June the 13th. So I don't think we're going to get that, but we might be colder than 2019. I had a lot of things that just didn't sprout at all. The honey locust, not one sprouted. This is the soldier bean. Now, I had them growing the last 2 years, but this year in the soil is fairly light, so I don't know why they didn't sprout. I planted everything at the same time, and you'll see the other ones. They're outside still. This is the black turtle, which I've grown before, and I got one sprouted there. Turn you a bit. So there's one sprouted there and one there, and that's it. I'll show you this now. We'll mention why it's looking like this when we get back outside, but they are looking still alive. So I had these outside, I brought them back in hoping that they would revive, and then I'll try again when the weather is much warmer. But this is the Solanaceae. I got 2 rows of garden huckleberry and 2 rows of golden pearls. And so that one won't make it, but the rest of them, they might make it and start to grow again. If so, I can get them outside. Now the hot peppers, of course, hot peppers, they'll fret below 10 degrees Celsius anyway. And then the corn is pretty much done for. So I'll bring you outside and we'll talk about what happened. So, as I said, the first 5 months were slightly warmer than the respective months in 2019. Our average last frost is May the 25th, and we're coming up to the first week in June, and it looked like the forecast was going to be right. We were going to have pretty much a week of rain, drizzle, and fog. So 3 days of rain and then drizzle and foggy weather. It was going to be heavily overcast. I said this will be a great time to harden things off. We won't get any freezing weather, I was fairly sure. So the tomatoes may lay over, but they should make it, I figured. Because the ones that I had growing, they survived down as long as it didn't get below 0 temperatures in the sunroom, they survived. So I brought everything out and I left it there. The rain would water it. It was heavily overcast, so they shouldn't get sunburned, etc., etc. Every one of the tomatoes died. They flopped over. They were still green for a couple of days, but eventually they died. This one held up the strongest. This is Sunrise Bumblebee. So of the lot, Sunrise Bumblebee was the strongest. The way this year's coming in, I would not have gotten any ripe tomatoes this year anyway. I'll just count that off as a loss, and we'll try again next year. Weather is what you get, climate is what you expect, right? I am going to try some experiments throughout the year, but we're not going to get any tomato harvest this year. That's the rest of the tomatoes there. The neon, that's pumpkin neon, They kind of faded right away. I'm going to try to get these growing if I got more seed. I'm going to try to figure out how to grow them because, like I said, I haven't been getting things to sprout. This one, the Naked Bear pumpkin. Okay, so I had these inside, and inside they never sprouted. They're just sitting there. So this is why, even though those two are dead, I watered this tray because that's nothing sprouted. And baby pan pumpkin, which is another one that I figured you could grow here in Newfoundland, and not a thing sprouted. So the furthest one over, C. maxima, the unknown C. maxima, which I was hoping to get because it's a really tasty pumpkin. And once again, you go here, we add Minnesota midget, nothing. I add one come up with sugar baby watermelon, of course it's dead now. A cucumber, nothing. The straight 8, the national pickling, and bush crop. There's 3 bush crop come up, and they died when I was trying to harden them off. And spaghetti squash, nothing. So I don't know what was happening with the things not sprouting. So this has nothing to do with hardening off. They didn't sprout at all when they're down in the grow room. Beans, while some of them are looking the worse for wear, they do, for the most part, seem alive. And I'm going to plant them in the ground today. Even these the thin ones, those are soy beans, so they're a different bean. They were late sprouting. Of course, like I said, I just show you the beans inside. It didn't sprout at all. These here are sprouting. And these down here, this is all the black jet soybean. They come up, the soybeans are hardier. The soybeans and the baking beans are apparently hardier than most squash. I do have one hopeful though, because these vegetable marrow, it's a really good squash, and it goes at a good size. This is about a meal for 2 people if you were just going to make a roasted squash. So it's nice. And this one here is a bean. What have I got? What kind of bean? That's Jacob's cattle bean. So I have 13 Jacob's cattle beans there. This is the Red Express cabbage. I have 3 of those, so that's nice. And this one is the Hurley Snowball cauliflower. And we shall see about this thing here. These, you see the one in the back is dying. They may fade away completely, but that's amaranth. And it looks like it's trying to put on a flower when it's only still tiny. It's really got shocked. You see, this one over here. Now I'm thinking amaranth is something that we should be able to grow, but I got to figure out how. Because I've been talking about the red-rooted amaranth that we have that grows as a weed here. And if you tend to red-rooted amaranth, you'll get a much bigger plant. The same as lamb's quarter. It grows as a weed, and it's fairly small normally. But if you tend to it, you can get, in some places they get like 6 foot tall lamb's quarter. Same idea with amaranth. If you get it in the right conditions, you can get a fairly large plant. So I'm working on how we get this type of amaranth, the other varieties of amaranth, growing. These are the snap peas, the sugar snaps. There are some spaces, but for the most part they're all coming up. I have the occasional perennial onion here. California poppy. It's a medicinal herb similar to chamomile, but it is actually stronger than chamomile. So I have the few initial ones coming up fairly good, but that's the only ones I found. So I have sprinkled some seed all the way along and ruffled it into the soil. Hopefully now when the weather is getting warmer that they'll sprout and grow as well. Over here in the center part, the daylilies and flowers are growing nicely. So that's snow peas growing on the inside. It looks like almost every one of the ones I planted are growing. And that's an echinacea. Another echinacea. This is the echinacea that's growing the best, so I'm happy with that. The perennial onions are doing the best in this center part. And oh, look what we have here. That's a California poppy. Didn't expect to find one there. But this, and you'll find them every so far. I planted a single row of cherry bell radish all the way along in the center part of this inside planting area, and all the way along on that portion of the fence as well. I have succeeded in making chamomile a weed in 3 areas of the garden now. So that's the ones that germinated first, and so they're the largest. This here, I'm assuming it's a turnip, but I don't know. Some kind of brassica. So here's more of the radish that are coming up. But over right there, see, my shadow is getting in the way now, but you see all these little guys? Chamomile. All these little tiny guys. So I have a big bunch of chamomile coming up right there. He's doing better than last year, which is to be expected. But he'll grow bigger this year, and then bigger the next year. You'll eventually get to be a really big plant. That's lovage. I put the red spring onions down here, and then there's the 2 St. John's wort, which are, once again, because this is not really an amended place, so I just put some kelp down and put the wood chips on top of it and stuck plants down through that. So it will take a few years before they actually get to their potential. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do now. I was just thinking it over. So we got lettuce here, and we've got dill. It's self-seeded very well, and like I say, this is a cooler year. It's coming back. I need to figure out another, just a green or something that's going to self-seed and put there. And I have this bed as a self-seeding one of those types. Like I say, I have greens and dill, and see what else I'm going to get to go in there that will reliably go to seed, or if it gets hot, bolt in the 1 year. In this bed, so I have the Jerusalem artichoke put in a row along the back, and I've bought several packets of perennial flowers. I'm going to put them in rows down here. And so if they grow this year, this is going to be a complete flower bed. But I'm going to transplant, because there'll be way more plants there than can actually fit in this when they're full grown. I'm just going to have it to start off a bunch of perennial flowers rather than starting them in the house 6 to 8 weeks early. If they don't flower this year, it's not a problem. All I need to know is get the plant up and growing, like the echinacea down front. Then next year they will flower. You see, it's June the 7th, and in my records, 2019, I planted out the small seed June the 7th. So any of these empty spaces, got to get the new weeds is coming up out of here. But among the chamomile, I put the small seed, because like I said, my vines that I was going to plant was not growing. I believe it was a zucchini I was going to put there, and beans down here. Now as far as the beans, I was going to spread out just the one type of beans, spread them out throughout the bed, because they could go 6 inches apart, but I'm going to spread them out so that the number I have goes over the entire bed. And that way I'll have a full bed of chamomile, beans, and whatever other small seed I put in here to maximize my harvest this winter. Now we're getting into something that is exciting, and something that was surprising as well. I'm going to have to go down this side to keep my shadow off the bed. But you see all the light green lettuce? So I must have had a bunch of lettuce in the compost. This is not the same as down the other bed. There's no reason for lettuce seed to be having dropped there other than must have come out of compost. However, this is where I planted carrots. You see all these little guys? Every row, carrots are coming up. I use the pipe method with all my small seed, but carrot seed are so small that getting them, making sure you've got just one seed at a time is practically impossible. So you're going to end up with bunches like this every so far. But I did do pretty good and got them spread, mostly all spread out. So what we have, we planted Denver's Athlon here, Scarlet Nantus down there. We planted Littlefinger here, and Corliss Toucan down there. That's the ones that I saved. I grew out the seed. When they come out, I was checking them all the time. There was a lot of carrots showed here, a lot of carrots showed down here, a lot of carrots showing here. Now they're not doing quite as well, and I blame it on the fact that this is sifted topsoil and not actually compost. I should have put a layer of compost on there before I set my carrots, but hindsight's 20/20, right? My Corliss Toucan, nothing. I searched the whole area, and like I say, the other ones, a lot had come up. So I re-sowed it with Scarlet Nantus, thinking I should be able to tell the difference between Corliss Toucan and Scarlet Nantus. Then I thought about it doesn't really matter, because if I'm going to grow, I have lots of Corliss Toucan seed anyway, and if I'm going to grow Scarlet Nantus out the seed, I'll just keep all 4 batches separate, and I'll take the carrot from this batch for my seed carrot. You see this little plant here? And look at the seed coat. See how spiky it is? When you buy carrot seed, you may have noticed that they are actually quite clean. There's no spikes on it like that. I don't quite know how to get them completely clean. I got it fairly clean, but I figured that was clean enough. So that one is one of my saved seed. That's not the Scarlet Nantus. Corliss Toucan, that is. How many of them have sprouted and will sprout, I don't know. And the other thing I'm thinking is that maybe because I didn't have them as clean as when you buy carrot seed, that maybe it delayed the germination a little bit. We'll see what we get as time goes. I think most of your brassicas you can plant in the fall, and they will start to grow when the weather temperature gets right. This of course is mustard, but I think you could do it with turnip and a few others as well. Coming along just nicely. I cleaned the paths out fairly well ahead of weeds, and I took up the strawberry plants that had gone out of this bed, and I put them over into this bed. So now I got quite a few strawberry plants in this bed, and I think it was corn actually. I have some corn planted in there, I think it is. Can't say for sure. No, there's something I planted there anyway. We'll see what it is if it comes up. And that's where I planted my 2 carrots and beets to grow the seed. This bed is looking nice, and I think this year, I mean, I got a lot of strawberries off that last year for it being the first year. So I'm expecting to get a good amount again this year. Last year was my first year getting good garlic harvest, and it's due to the soil. You had to build up your soil and give them good fertile loose soil, I think, and of course consistently moist. I got that layer of mulch over there, and they're doing just wonderfully. I didn't point out the onions when we were on the balcony, but I got 60 or 70 onion sets that I can move out here. Give it a good water because they're easier to see when the ground is wet, and find out whether it's just going to be onions or do I have to plant something else here. I have the first half of this bed planted out with arugula. There's nothing here yet. The entire bed was supposed to be one of the bigger ones, one of the squashes. I'm not remembering what it is offhand now. So I would have planted something else here anyway, because the squash starts out small, then grows larger during the year, and you have spaces. Some things like that I will leave there and see what it is, because, well, we know it's a brassica, but what brassica, right? Sugar beets are actually coming along quite nicely. Now these will be fairly spread out, but a beet, when you put in a beet quote seed, it's actually a fruit, and one of those fruits can have 3 or 4 seeds in it. So to avoid getting more than one beet growing up together, you're not going to do it, because you don't know how many seeds is in each fruit that you plant. I didn't plant them overly far apart, because I'm thinking, well, I was fairly confident that they were going to sprout well, but there will be some spaces, and so when I have to take one out from the center, say I leave this one and take this one, then I can transplant him to a space where there's an empty spot. I had to harvest the rhubarb before doing this video. It was needed elsewhere, so I did take a picture of it before I harvested it. So here's what it looked like before the harvest. But I've got those flower stalks left there because I've never seen a open rhubarb flower. We've always removed flower stalks. And I decided this year I wanted to see what they look like. And so that's why I left them. The plan was to put some beans up in that end, and then I asked sugar baby watermelon for here. It's kind of counting your chickens before they hatch, but what I did this thing off because I don't have any rutabaga. I just did this entire bed in turnip. A couple months time I will have turnip, whereas it's going to be 4 months before I get rutabaga. Over on this side, Kohlrabi. I have purple Kohlrabi growing here, and I don't know if that one brassica thing that I see there now is a Kohlrabi or is it something else. But at any rate, I have purple Kohlrabi on this end, and I have the white Kohlrabi on the far end. And there's something I haven't heard anybody say. Okay, so this is the asparagus. Early in the season, you can get your asparagus spears, but after a little while, you leave them and let them go to fern. Well, they were growing up, and should I or shouldn't I? Because, I mean, these are several years old, but I had to transplant them up here to get them growing. This one back here, he had a little thicker spears coming up. So one day I come and snapped them off. He snapped off nice and easy. And I ate them, just raw. And boy, was that delicious. Nice and soft and juicy. So a couple of days later, I come out and I decided to try one of these. And the head was just starting to go, looking like it was going a little loose. But I went to break it and it was hard to break. And then I went to chew on it and all of the outside portion went woody. So it was just basically inedible. So you only get a certain amount of time when the spear is growing. You have to get it while that fern part up here, while this is still tight. Otherwise it's going to go woody on you. You remember the video I done where I was showing that pipe that I could stand up and plant away at my small seed? So this is the rutabaga. And we can see now, you see, they all come up nicely spaced out. No two are together. And once in a while you might accidentally put two together, but for the most part, a seed as big as a rutabaga seed is very easy to take one at a time and put them perfectly spaced. These will be so easy to thin out now, and what I'll do, I'll wait until they touch each other and I'll take up every second one, and then they'll touch each other again and I'll take up every second one. 6 to 8 inches I think is the final spacing for rutabaga, so I might thin them out 2 times, I might thin them out 3 times. This is not set out. I just put the stripes in it. I got this bed done just before the rain started. Rain started and then it stopped, and I tried to put some seeds in the first 2 rows, but it was just too wet, so I said I'll wait until the rain session is over and I'll plant it out then. But this is the bed that the lemon balm was in, so I have a video on that, which will probably be the next one after this one. I'm very happy with this. Now, what I want to point out first is that I put, you see the little radishes growing here? So this is champion radish. I put in the spaces here, figuring that I probably will have time to get a radish harvest before everything closes in. They are growing so nicely all the way in. I am hopeful that I'm going to get some good brassica harvest this year. On this side, see, I have a cabbage out there. That's a broccoli, I think. But then I planted purple kohlrabi starts I had, and I planted the white kohlrabi starts I had right here, thinking that right there, that's a kale, and then there's a dead plant I just left there to make a good divider. Now, what white kohlrabi, you say? Well, see the sticks I got around here? Something wandered across this bed and nibbled on a couple of the plants over on that side. And thinking it was a rabbit or a snowshoe hare, I put those sticks around to deter it. Well, I came out here one day and something had eaten every one of the white kohlrabi. Here's one here. He's still got a little bit of leaf on him, so hey, it might even grow, who knows. And another one over there. But yeah, ate the tops of every one of them. But they didn't go this side and eat these. Here is the kale. Now I had that growing up, and there was a whole bunch of leaves on there, and I let the leaves die, so it was just coating over the top, which would have been a mulch for this stock. And when the stock started to spread out, I just removed all those dead leaves again, and now I got a kale. I'm thinking that all I need to do, and hopefully I remember and try it, come winter, late fall, when this starts to, we get heavy enough frost to kill the leaves, bury this in a mulch. And then when 1st of May comes next year, take the mulch off again and see if it grows. Oh, the potatoes are coming up. So that's wonderful. These 2 beds are beets. This is a notorious weed that sets seed, and I mean, you can't help this because it's setting seed somewhere else and they're flying in. I don't let this go to seed in the garden, so the seed has to come from somewhere else. But the issue is, when you're growing beets, that, well, every beet, they're different. They come up different. They don't come up looking the same. So, and these are quite similar to beets first when they come up. So you have to wait. Now, you see, these are beets right here. This is what I was saying about beets lodge. There's only one fruit I put down there, but there's like 4 beets grew out of it. But now that I know what these are like, because this is a, there's a tag here somewhere, but I can't see it. At any rate, this is one of the new beets I got. Now I can go among them and slowly get most of these weed plants out of there. and just be very careful when I go in the row, because I can see that they are slightly different. You see, this is bull's blood, eh? Comes up, and the first seed leaves are really dark purple. Chicago, or however you would pronounce that, they're being a little bit delayed. Whether or not it's because they're more in the shade or what, I don't know, but they are coming up. You see, there's one right there, and a couple more right there. That's the ones with the white and red rings. So those are the ones that, the seeds that I grew. Detroit Dark Red. Both types in this bed, Detroit Dark Red and the Chicago, they are slower coming up, but they'll come. So that's what we're going to call the end. And yeah, I hope you found it interesting to see what is growing on. This is a more normal year in Newfoundland, and you'll see I'll set out the more small seed now, and I'll keep everything packed, and we're going to rely more on traditional crops this year than any novelty things.